think it's anything to do with a certain religion, do you think?
No,
is it anything like that?
No, it's more to do with a kind of a drug, isn't it? It's a drug.
Yeah, well, those that take it ought to be ashamed of themselves.
According to The Sun, there were thousands of empty ecstasy wrappers littering the floor of the 250-foot-long hangar.
Drugs, sex, sensation.
Some newspapers have called acid house music a sinister and evil cult which lures young people into drug-taking. The message is certainly getting across.
The organisers kept the location secret until the very last moment, which was the main reason, according to the papers, why there were so few police here and they were unable to act.
Drug-crazed kids, some as young as 12, boogied for 8 hours yesterday at Britain's biggest ever ecstasy bash.
The party took place here, infiltrated by reporters from the Mail and the Sun.
There's meant to be a drugs-related craze.
What do you know about acid house music?
It must affect the brain in some way.
Unless it's just the music that does it.
All them lights flashing don't do you any good either, do it? I wouldn't even go in the pub where them lights are.
Oh, no.
They drive you mad, don't they?
Welcome to the 88 podcast with yours truly, Wayne Anthony. And on today's show, we've got a major link in the chain. This guy, he was one of the founders, one of the first dance magazines that was ever produced. He also was a bit of a fixer in that he used to get venues for all the big major warehouse promoters back in the days of Acid House, 88 and 89. And there's lots of other things he's done in between and since then. But rather than go on and on and on, I want to introduce you to a really good friend of mine. And there's loads of times when I actually pronounce his surname wrong. But here tell you, Ian Milne. How you doing, brother?
Wayne, brother, yes, hello.
Hey, matey. How you doing, son?
All good.
Here we go. Excellent.
All
so,
good.
you know, I mean, I remember the first time I actually saw you in a documentary. Do you remember that documentary where you was driving around in your car?
Yeah.
How long ago was that? What documentary was that?
The Chemical Generation.
Oh, yeah, the chemical. I was on that one too, actually. Yeah, that was it. Channel 4.
Channel 4, yeah. It was done by Mark. Oh my gosh, I've lost his surname, but he's done lots of fantastic docs since.
Yeah, sure. And I think it was Boy George. He was the actually host of the program, wasn't he? He was the presenter.
Yeah, I wasn't told that at the time.
Why not? George is all right. He's all right. I mean, I remember one time, yeah, because obviously you know the situation. All the parties were secret. Yeah. And I remember one time he somehow got my mother's phone number, and he rang my mum up out of the blue and just said, "Hi, you know, I'm Boy George. Do you know where your son's party is?" You know, and of course she's going, "No, who are you? Of course you're not Boy George." So he sang down the phone to her to try and prove that, you know, it was Boy George, and she believed him and she gave him the address. But George, he used to come to all the parties, you know, when we was doing Sunrise and when we was doing Genesis Sunrise.
Yeah.
He would come and no, he was a good lad. He was a good lad. But yeah, so the Chemical Generation, because I remember they interviewed me. Do you know where they interviewed me? At that venue in King's Cross.
Yeah.
That big old warehouse where they used to do the parties. Oh, what was it called?
Good.
We're both... Bagley's?
Exactly.
Bagley's, that's right. Yeah, it was down in Bagley's. But yeah, the Chemical Generation. And so I remember you was driving around in your car. What was the premise of that?
It was what happened was I turned up to do the interview, and I think they were also interviewing Irvine Walsh that day, which was fantastic. I got to meet Irvine Walsh, that I was really happy about. But I turned up in this beautiful BMW, and they saw this car and said, "Oh, that's a really nice car." And then all of a sudden, the director had this really good idea. What if we drive around? And that kind of, because you were always driving around. So it looked really well. It looked fantastic, except for I was driving around King's Cross, which was just packed with cars, three fellas in the back
with
no
a
one
camera.
looking at, and they kept saying, look up at the camera, and they had to edit it because there was just cab drivers just abusing me.
Oh, that's
all over the place.
That is funny, dude.
Yeah.
And did they have a light on you as well?
No. Yeah. The light. There was just everything. Yeah, cab drivers abusing me. I think I did about an 8-minute interview, but there was so much abuse from cab drivers. I think it got reduced to about 20 seconds.
How funny, mate.
They
How
could use
funny.
it. Hysterical. And I just kept laughing. And of course, that's not helping the director, as you.
Because really, lots of people might not know you. I mean, everyone in industry people, they all know who you are. But there would be lots of people out there who used to go to lots of different parties who won't know who you are. And you promoted quite a lot of parties. I mean, in between the Acid House time and in between now, I've been to loads of your parties, really cool parties in mansion houses, stately homes, and all these wonderful types of venues, you know. But back in 89, I mean, you were getting venues, whether it be fields or whatever. Tell us a little bit about the process of acquiring venues for promoters back in 88 and 89.
Okay, so I kind of, so back in 80, it actually kind of started in 87, where I went to Ibiza on holiday because my girlfriend had basically split up with me, and a mate of mine said, look, let's just go on holiday for a couple of weeks. I went to Ibiza. I'd never heard of this island before in my life. I didn't even know where I was going. He just booked it. And I fell onto a couple of people that I had known previously through school friends, Trevor Fung, who kind of said, we're doing these parties at this place, you should come.
Wow. So you was at the very beginning, mate.
Yeah, it was, you know, the thing is, I've always been into different musics and different trends. I was crazy into the reggae thing and the blues parties of Brixton and Maidavale when I was young. I was into the soul thing of the All Dayers. I was into the punk thing for a little bit. I just loved these new movements. And that's what I found in Ibiza. It was a new movement. And then when we came back to London, it was just dead, you know. And you didn't want to go to a nightclub. Everyone was dressed in black and looking cool, and, you know, and everything else was so free. So I just wanted, at first I just went to club parties and little parties with Nicky, with Paul Oakey and people like that. And I just wanted to get involved somehow. And I was working in, I had a good job, I had a good pay, I was comfortable. And then I met a promoter, a guy who was going to a party. It had been called off. He was really unhappy. And I kind of thought, okay, that's something that I could maybe help find. And just so happened, the place I was working at, on the floor below were these two young guys who were selling land, and they were essentially surveyors who were selling land to the likes of B&Q, Texas, Tesco's, who were all building these big things on the outskirts of London.
Wow! But just to go back, so what was you actually doing before you discovered Acid House?
So, from being a wild kid that left school and didn't do anything till he was 22, I tried desperately to go straight and get an office job, and you know, went in the city, and the city would then, anyone who had a little bit of chat and was a bit positive was kind of thrown in. You can make money buying and selling shares. And I was doing that. I did that for about 3 years. I was really enjoying it, really successful, until I went to Ibiza and came back, and then
So suddenly you found yourself in Ibiza. Right, we're up to speed.
To be honest, it was twofold. It was Ibiza. Also, I was driving around in Surrey once, and I fell upon the police, who stopped me and told me there's no throughway here because all these people have stuck themselves in these trees to stop some building. I thought, that what are they doing? So I got out, and there was all these young people, you know, with long hair, and they were just free to sort of protest and say, no, you can't build these things. So that really intrigued me, that there were young people, and I saw all these older people. There was no middle class people. There were just young people with dreadlocks, and they were all being helped by all the old people who also didn't want trees and fields removed. You know, it was really interesting. So I think that got me thinking, why am I doing this thing with finance and money and helping people build all these places that all these people are trying to stop, and Ibiza is all free? So I think that kind of got inside my head, and I always think that it made my head beautiful, you know.
Sure, it's a nice description.
Yeah, and so I kind of thought, okay, I want to be part of this, you know, and so yeah, back to these two guys. They had a big pile of land that was available for sale, and at the same time, you know, synchronicity, Wayne. I had an end of year accounts meeting where I was sort of with an accountant who's telling me all these things about what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing. And I kind of told him, I'm going to leave this life and I'm going to try something new. And I'm going to try to find places for parties and things like that. And I told him he thought it was completely crazy. But he himself was quite a character. He was an Indian man in a pinstripe suit who was Oxford educated, who spoke Queen's English, you know, kept saying to me, oh dear boy, you'll never do it. You'll be like some tearaway. Where's your education? You know. But then I said, yeah, these two guys have got all this land. And I think it could be interesting. And at that point, he kind of said, well, I've got a small plane. And if you want, if you pay for my fuel, I'll fly you around London if you want.
Oh.
So that's basically how I kind of went and looked at all these places. And quite often, I would be in a two-seater plane leaving Biggin Hill and flying around, which was a joy in itself, you know.
For sure.
That's kind of how it started. I'd spot land and think that could be interesting. Then it's a bit of conversation with a farmer. But it kind of took, it was just synchronicity, as I say, because promoters were, like yourself, were finding that the warehouses were, it was getting out of hand in the warehouses. Just too many people, man.
Yeah, totally. And they were locked off to us as well, you know. And the thing about it is, you know, like what you just said about your friend spoke the Queen's English, nice pinstripe suit. I mean, you kind of played that role as well. You know, you'd go in there and, you know, you'd convince these landowners or whatever. But so originally, when you were going around in the aeroplanes and stuff, like that was 87, and I suppose.
No, that was 87. That was 88.
Okay, so that was 88. So I guess at that point, was you thinking about party promoters renting the land or for acid house parties, or was you thinking more along the lines of, you know, film production parties and rap parties, that type of thing?
No, don't. I wasn't into film production part. That story didn't get born till till we needed to tell that story.
Yeah, for sure. Till the blag happened. The thing is, and we can explain to people, it's fine. The laws of statute is, yeah. But we could explain to people that was part of the whole blag, is that we had to convince the authorities that what we were doing was legal and all above board. And one of those things was, I mean, you could probably explain it more, where, we needed to have, film studios where we're making TV documentaries or we're making films. And then you'd have characters like Ian here who would go in, front it out, taking the big bag of money. I mean, tell us a little bit about that. What really, I mean, I know you got venues for quite a lot of people, Yeah. I mean, tell us about some of the people that you got venues for.
So quite often I went in a roundabout way. Like you of asking me to come on the podcast, I quite like to be a little hidden.
Sure. Well, I knew you'd only do it because it was me,
Exactly.
I'll get him.
That's exactly what I said. I can't say no to him.
Yeah, no one else is going to get him, so this is going to be unique.
I can't say no to him. He's the only one. There's three or four people I can't say no to, and you're one of them, brother.
And me to you, brother, too.
Yeah.
So what you mean is you don't want to say?
No.
I'm only teasing.
Statute of limitations has passed, man.
Yeah.
I think what we
maybe a couple of them.
Yeah, we kind of. I went through other people. There was a nice couple of guys, couple of agents in King's Cross who had a little tap into Dave and Tony at Sunrise, Fitz and
Hypnosis
with Tintin, Tintin and then Anton at Energy.
Yeah.
So
Tintin, Jeremy, and Anton. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then so I was kind of.
Oh, so was it you that got the Westway?
No, that wasn't one of the ones with me. But I think that was Lynn. There was a few people involved in getting them. But I think once venues, I mean, all the venues, the film studios and things, they were sort of quite open to it.
Yeah, sure.
Albeit they might not have got the first idea of what it was going to be. But once they saw what it was, they were quite happy. I think the first instant when we went to farmers, I didn't really tell them very much. No real blag. I just went and said, I want to hire your field.
Yeah.
And I want to do it from Friday morning till Monday morning. And is that okay?
And it's like 20 large.
Surprisingly.
Did you get him cheap, brother? Oh, mate, you're jammy, mate. You're jammy, mate. Oh, mate, I remember the most expensive venue, and bearing in mind these are, there wasn't licensed venues, but the most expensive bit of land I ever paid was £20,000.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was cash up front, no messing around,
It got more expensive as
the year went on.
It got extremely expensive after the newspapers slapped it on the front page.
And the big worry, and what people don't realise, is that when we actually try to go the legal route and we try to hire legal land, that the other problem that we had is once that was out, that we had this legal plot, the police, whether it would be a club or a bit of land, the police would then go to the owners and scare the daylights out of the owners, wouldn't they? Be like, if you let these guys come here, we won't renew your license next year if you were a club.
Yeah.
But the other thing was, I remember the local farmers, they used to get sent to Coventry.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I remember Ken Tappenden, the head of the police pay party unit. I was having a conversation with him once.
Lovely man.
Lovely man. He's lovely man. You know, we hated him back then, but he's turned into a diamond. He's turned into an absolute diamond.
Yeah.
Because and for those who might, and for those that might not know, again, you know, he was a chief superintendent, I think, and he was, for those that might not know, and he was appointed by Margaret Thatcher to basically close down illegal parties, acid house parties, all-night parties, any party that wasn't licensed. And at that time, no events were licensed, so it just meant everyone, you know. And so, and one of their tactics was, you know, they would go to the people, the owners of land, and give them a hard time. And I remember Kenneth was telling me that one of the farmers, he was in one of the documentaries, he rented out his land, and I think it was the Sunrise. And, you know, Sunrise had the party that went on all night, you know, however many people turned up, 15, 20,000 people turned up. And Ken Tapperton was saying that for about 15 years after that event, none of the locals around that farmer would speak to him. For about 15 years, they were so upset with him that he gave his land out to, you know, to these acid party promoters.
From those times, what I learnt about that, and subsequently through some mansion house parties and lots of other places that I rented, is that you need to really send the owner on holiday for the weekend or the week.
Yes.
So I started buying them a ticket.
We've done that too,
Go away to Marbella for a week. We got this hotel.
Yeah, first class, limos all the way.
Yeah, and how we present that is to say, can we do it on this day? And then they'd say there, and then we'd come and say, as it's on this day, I was actually going on holiday, and I've got these 2 tickets, and if you want, you can have them, or you know.
Very smart.
Quite often they think, okay, let's get out of the way, you know. And I would say that'll also get you out of the way. There'll be no hassle, and on Monday morning you can come back and.
Yeah, perfect.
It'll be good. And
perfect. And that's before, obviously, all the newspaper coverage.
Yeah, that's before.
That's when they would go, isn't it? You know. I remember that pub in Watford, the Game Bird.
Yeah.
I remember I helped Jarvis out with his biology event, that big outdoor event.
Yeah.
And I remember we drove down there in the limo, and we stopped at the Game Bird because the Game Bird was put up as one of the meeting points.
Yeah.
And when we arrived outside, a few of the bouncers were saying that, you know, the owners wasn't happy because obviously thousands of cars was turning up. You know? And so I remember for some reason, they were outside. They came outside in the car park and we spotted them. And so Jarvis and I, we went over and spoke to them, you know. And so we invited them down. We said, look, you know, you want to come down? We're really sorry. You know, we'll give you some money. And they were like, no, we don't want any money. And we was like, look, we'll send a limo down for you later. And we did, you know, we sent a limo down for them. And they was just, oh, this is amazing. This is great. You know, we'll tell the policeman to leave you alone, you know.
Yeah.
And it was. And that's the thing. When the difference between what people read in newspapers, you know, normal everyday people, and what the reality was, there was a vast gap in between that.
Absolutely.
And so I think when people, they experienced it for themselves and they were like, well, hang on, okay, there's 20,000 people here, and, you know, some of them might seem a little bit off their heads or something like that. It's like, it's non-threatening. You know, it's really positive. Everyone there seems to be having an amazing time, you know. So whereas if you're in a pub in the East End or anywhere really, you know, where people are drinking alcohol, where it could be 100 people. Yeah. And, you know, it could be a threatening situation. I mean, it's changed a lot these days, but in the 80s, it was like that in pubs and clubs, wasn't it? You know?
I also think that we helped change that, the nature of going out in the UK.
Sure, 100%.
Certainly in places like Ibiza, that was not the case of how you went out and partied. Whereas in the UK, it was very much a drinking culture and could disrupt into violence
Sure.
in the nicest of places. You know,
Sure.
had drunk a little too much. Whereas I think we cultivated this amazing feeling, and I think that now, you know, I think we both agree that dance culture has changed society in the 90s for the better in so many ways, and that's certainly one of them. You know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it kick-started the whole digital evolution in music. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a powerful scene. But you know, going back to Ibiza, when you was there with Trevor and the guys, you know, Trevor and Ian Lee's cousin Ian St. Paul, yeah, it was like at that point, you know, because you watched its growth, you came to all those big events, you know, you knew everybody. And this is before the magazine, I imagine.
Yeah.
Did you envision it being having such a huge impact on the UK when you was in Ibiza in 1987?
Oh no, absolutely not. Absolutely, you know, I defy anyone that says they expected that. But I genuinely think by the time I was a year into the magazine, which was probably by end of 90, there was no doubt that it wouldn't be stopped. I think once the law was changed to stop the outdoor illegal parties.
Sure.
And Rain Dance, Ray got his license, and Rain Dance started getting licensed and doing them over in Vauxhall and places like that. There was no doubt.
Yeah, and sorry, excuse me. Yeah, Jenkins Lane was Rain Dance, wasn't it? For the first ones. Just again, for people that might not know, as far as I know, I mean, I don't know, but as far as I know, Rain Dance were the first, if not one of the first, to actually get a license, an entertainment license. Were they entertainment license then?
Exactly.
An entertainment and dance license. So they really broke ground because
absolutely.
Because it was a completely dedicated event. I remember it well. Yeah,
sure. I mean, when we.
But going back to the magazine now. So I mean, so there was so many directions that you could go in, wasn't there? You know, you could have done parties, you know, you could have started record labels, you know, management agencies. There were so many design, you know, you could have went in that direction, merchandising. So there were so many different areas where you could have went, but you decided, which was invaluable to the growth of the scene itself. You decided that you was going to do a paper magazine. Well, I say paper, it was always paper back then. We only say paper in this modern age, don't we? You know, because people say it to me, oh really? I say, yeah, I've got a magazine. Oh, is it digital or paper? It's like, okay, but back then it was just a magazine, you know. So what made you choose to go along that path? Because that's not an easy path to go down, is it? You know.
I after the summer of '89, I actually did my first party, and in my view, bearing in mind there was yourselves, Sunrise Energy, that I'd gone to and found land for, and there's 10, 15, 20 thousand people turning up. I did my first party, and it was a total wreck. I only got 4,500 people, Wayne. I was horrified.
It's good, it's bloody good. We had about 300 at our first party, mate. You've done fantastic.
No. I mean, I'd seen Sunrise grow from 300 people to 25,000.
Done well, mate.
But yeah.
And which one was that? Which party was that? Was that the Egypt party?
We changed venue. Literally.
Oh yeah. Was it with a chap named Dave? Was it?
9 o'clock at night. It was with a really good friend of mine, an Egyptian guy.
Okay.
Who just believed in it, and he didn't do any of the things. He didn't go to any parties. He just thought it was exciting.
Sure.
But I think I did that. I thought it was a huge disappointment in numbers, but I had a really good party, and I went away, and we had this conversation. I had a conversation with a couple of MPs. I'd gone to the House of Commons to talk about licensing.
Sure.
And with a couple of lawyer friends who were very up on law. There were young lawyers, and there was
party goers.
There was party
well.
goers, exactly, and it was apparent they were not going to allow us to continue. They were going to do everything in their power to stop it. So I went off for 6 weeks and to Greece and hung around island hopping. And
because just I don't mean to cut into you, brother, because obviously at that point you had to make a decision, wasn't it? Because you had to make a decision right there and then. It's like, okay, I can see that the government are they're on this like a ton of bricks, and they're not going to remove their boot from your neck, So rather than go the illegal route where just banging, crash into a load of warehouses, do a load of parties, you kind of took a step back and said, look, let me think about this. So boom, so you went to Greece.
I really wanted to do parties, but I just didn't think it was too much hassle. It was going to be too much hassle, and clubs at that point were just stale. I talked to a number of clubs. They were really not interested, and I know Paul and Nikki and were all doing some great clubs on Mondays and Thursdays and Wednesdays.
Every day of the week, wasn't it? There was a nightclub.
It was fantastic, and I mean, it was fantastic that you could do that in the week, and but the weekend was big parties, and I just thought, okay, where could this go, and what could be interesting? What could be interesting, because the likes of the party that we did for Egypt, for Sunrise, Genesis, Energy, things were getting fantastic. I mean, the creativity was just
at its height.
It was just amazing.
And it was a DIY creativity as well, wasn't it? It wasn't like just driven by money. There was a creativity behind the whole thing. Yeah,
absolutely. It wasn't just fun. It was creative. It was exciting. It was dangerous. It was It was
bloody dangerous.
Yeah, it was life. It was life.
Yeah.
So I think.
Because it's a clever route. It's a clever decision that you made there. Because
I don't think clubs were ready for that creativity at that point.
No, because they were still in their early stages of it, wasn't they? Because remembering that they already were slightly teeved off the fact that they lost their clientele for 2 years. Yeah. No one was going into the clubs. So they were teeved off about that, and so. The stage that you're talking about is when there were the police had come down heavy on it. They've stopped all the parties basically, and there were certain venues that were starting to open up as well, wasn't there? Yeah. And so it was at that point where you have to decide, well, do we go back into the clubs or do we carry on doing this? So I totally understand.
Yeah.
But again, sorry to cut you again, but the decision that you made was quite a clever decision, because what you did was you unified the whole scene, and that was always going to have more of an impact than just you doing parties on your own.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that parties aren't impactful, because I mean, look where we are today, you know. So it's not that, but in and of itself, rather than it was just Ian and Egypt, it was you as unifying everyone. So everybody wanted to come and be on your platform, which, you know.
Sure. I think what I really enjoyed was it had certainly got competitive towards the end of '89. You know, there were hundreds of flyers. Don't people think there were just 5 or 6 parties? There was hundreds of flyers.
There was. Because originally, obviously, when one of the promoters, if it was us, Sunrise or Energy, did a party, there was no other big parties that night. It was just us. That's it. No one just said, look, there's no point, you know. But as it got later, and, you know, this is after all the massive newspaper campaigns talking about you earning £500,000 every night and all this type of stuff. So suddenly there was this whole new rafter of promoters. And so now, rather than there just being one big party on the night, now you might have 10, 20, you know, or, you know, 100 events over any one weekend. And so, so you get lost amongst the noise.
Yeah.
I mean, the one good thing about that, the one redeeming factor of that, is that all of these events were happening all over the country.
Absolutely.
You know, and that was when everyone was tuned in, everyone was plugged into it. So rather than because up to that point, all of these youngsters, I was one of those youngsters, and so were you. You know, we were like leaving our houses. You know, if you lived in Scotland, you know, there were acid house parties were happening, you know, in and around London and Manchester and stuff, but you had to leave Scotland, or, you know, there were places outside of London if you wanted to go to an event, or you would have to, which we all did at one time or another, you would have to travel from one end of the country to the other end of the country. And as it got later, as you're saying, it meant there was lots more parties, and these parties, they were local. And so, you know, again, people had the choice now. It's like, okay, rather than us get in this car and drive 3 hours to the party that it might get stopped by police, you know, we can actually just go to the club down the road and have a great time with our mates, you know. And so it was in this atmosphere where you said, okay, this is a bloody good idea.
It was not just more of an idea. What I wanted is I like the ability to talk to you, to talk to Dave, to talk to Fitz, to talk to, you know, some DJs. I didn't want to be a competitor of them or make them my competitor. I like the idea, and I was talking to lots of people all the time. Do you want to do that? Oh, if you know, I love Jarvis, another brother. You know, as soon as he got
cancelled, Jarvis.
as soon as he
cancelled himself,
they were on him big.
It was a classic. Bless him. You know the moment, don't you? You know, I remember the moment so well. It was when he was on Kilroy. Remember?
Yeah.
When he was on Kilroy.
I didn't see him on Kilroy, but
when he was on Kilroy, and he said to Ken Tappington, at that time, again, was the head of the police pay party unit, and he was a chief superintendent. He was a highly decorated police officer. And Jarvis, you know, stood up, and, you know, he's a big bloke, and he's this big black bloke, you know what I mean? He had sunglasses on, a hat on as well, big leather jacket. And he stood up, and he loomed over everybody, and he said directly to this top policeman that if you stop my party, I'm going to have 40,000 people just driving all around London. You know? And it was like, oh dear. You know, the amount of MPs that would have been watching that and just said, there is no way this party is going to happen. But you know,
me and about 20 other people talked about it for about 24 hours solid.
Yeah, for sure.
I never saw it, but the number of people who just...
Mate, they invited me. They was going to send a limo and stuff, and I was like, no, because I was so scared about being arrested. That was my thing. It was like, I don't really want to put my face up front, you know. It's such a contrast to now. When I did my last parties like 8 years ago, whatever, Because now obviously everyone knows who you are.
Yeah.
So, and they know what you look like, you know. So it was really weird now because, and it was lovely. It was a lovely thing. I'm not, you know, but where I would walk into a building, and literally when I did my reunions, every single person knew who I was. And that was a bit strange, you know. It was like, oh, hello. It's like, oh, wow. Because, you know, before, if you were an industry, you wouldn't know who we were, you know.
I mean, quite a lot of people that went to all the big parties didn't even know who was throwing them half the time. They just did the name and off they went. But
Exactly.
yeah, but bless Jarvis. From that day on, he was marked
Top boy, mate. Yeah.
He was marked until Tony came along.
Oh, Tony took it away, didn't he? You know, I mean, Tony. Funny enough, I was watched that Jonathan Ross clip he did, and for those that don't know, Tony Costinator, he organised Sunrise, and he was quite good. He was really good at his public relations. I mean, he was an expert at public relations. He was a ninja. And I remember, do you remember he went on to Jonathan Ross show, which was the most popular show at the time. It was a huge show, and Jonathan Ross, he was kind of edgy. He used to wear really nice suits. Remember all the suits? But he was quite edgy at that time. And Tony went on the show and handcuffed himself to Jonathan Ross. And Jonathan Ross wasn't happy about it.
He was not a happy bunny, was he?
No. And then you had that other radio guy. They had another radio guy. They kept digging out Tony, you know. In the end, Tony was going, "You're just a wanker." You know? I watched it just a few days ago, you know. And the radio DJ was this famous guy. And you know who else was on it? Susie and the Banshees.
Yeah.
Susie. So he was an expert at that, you know, a real expert.
He was fantastic. But I mean, Jarvis must have watched that and thought, "Thank heavens, someone else has stepped up."
Yeah, because that party in the end. That party ended up this party because remember he billed it as, you know, the 40,000 people birthday party, you know, the biggest birthday party in the world, you know, and that was one that they had Public Enemy, you know, and all these live EPMD. I think that one was wrong, but so they had all these major hip hop artists there, if you remember. And then on that night, there was just an army of police out. You know, I mean, Jarvis is coming on and he will talk about it, but there was an army of police out. And I was with him that night. Yeah. And we ended up in Birmingham. It was the Hummingbird. Wait, not Birmingham. Was it Birmingham or Bristol? Bristol.
Okay.
Bristol, yeah. And it had a famous old black venue there, you know. And because, you know, there were been, you know, a lot of civil rights type stuff in Bristol in the past, you know, so they had this venue that was, excuse me, owned by some black dudes who would go all night. They didn't care, you know, and it started about, you know, 8, 9 in the morning. I mean, it was a complete failure because no one knew that they were going to end up in Bristol at the beginning. It was either Bristol or Birmingham, one of those two, but no one knew they were going to end up there. You know, and so, you know, we lost lots and lots of people on the way and picked up, you know, BBC was outside and, you know, but
I think going back to your question.
Yeah, the foundations of the magazine.
I wanted to continue talking to those people on a regular basis. And, you know, I like the scene. I like the scene and the people in it. You know,
sure.
You know,
and you had a lot to offer.
And so the magazine was just something. My mum, rest her beautiful soul, used to work for a magazine. She worked for a magazine for 15, 16 years.
Okay.
And I kind of was talking about doing something, and I happened to go off to Greece, have this little moment on the beach when a friend of mine pushed me off my chair, which just rolled back onto the sand, and instead of moving, I just lay there and looked up at the sky for about 10 minutes. And in that moment, I think I just got up and said, I think I know what I'm going to do next.
Excellent.
And that's where it was born.
Excellent.
I came back, I spoke to my mum, and she said, look, if you want to do that, I can give you a couple of hints. You've got to put a dummy copy together, go and see a distributor, because I told her I was going to distribute it through all these little record shops.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, everywhere you distribute flyers.
Yeah, and that made sense to me. But my mum said, well, that's crazy. You're going to drive around London all day, and all week and all month. So
all the time.
And you'd have to collect your money. And how are you going to do that? And blah, blah, and just posed me a list of questions that basically, you know, got me from smiley to, oh shit. You know?
This has just got real.
Yeah. But then she just said this fantastic line at the end: just go and find a distributor. Here's the names of the 3 biggest ones, and go and see them. I'll make an appointment for you if you like.
Excellent.
That was it.
Wow.
I went and saw the first one, and they, with the dummy copy, which I still have.
Excellent.
A dummy copy, for those who don't know, is just literally, you know, you make a dummy magazine, stick some things in with Pritt stick, and go along and go, there's going to be a page about this and a page about that.
Excellent. That's how it was done in those days, you see. You know, technology's helped us a lot.
It was a great, I had a great meeting with them because, firstly, I went to this distributor who was the 2nd biggest distributor in the UK. I showed them this dummy magazine, and they literally said, okay, it's a really good idea, and I think we can put you out through W.H. Smith's, and I think a place called John Menzies, that was the other big kind of newspaper.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
At all the train stations.
Yeah.
And they said, great, we're gonna do it on sale or return, and we're gonna take it. And we kind of just tried to keep a straight face at that moment, all happy. And then they told us, okay, we need 20,000 copies. And which date do you want to start at?
Wow. Yeah.
At which point me and my then partner Alison, who was a designer,
straight to mum.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Well, what we did was we kind of thought we were going to print a couple of thousand.
That's what I mean. There's just like, 20,000, please.
And then they said 20,000,
which is a huge amount.
Yeah,
and it's a huge risk, isn't it? I'm sorry to butt in, but you know, because I want people to understand like what's happening around this, you know. So, you know, bearing in mind, you know, the newspapers have been thrashing the scene, absolutely thrashing the scene. You know, the media's been thrashing the scene. So you've come up with this idea, which is generated around the scene, which has had some really, really bad press. So to even get a major distributor interested in doing this, you know, this magazine, it is a real achievement, mate. So I just wanted to set that out.
Thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was a huge thing. And one of the things I think we were always good at is the creativity
and the blag. Always good at the blag.
The creativity to see a path forward. I think the creativity to see a path forward.
Yeah.
You know,
creativity and blagging, totally.
As you know, if the room wasn't built, you know, if you went into a warehouse and the room wasn't built big enough, just knock down one of the walls.
Yeah, I know a fella.
It's a simple solution.
Listen, my sound boys could do anything.
Yeah, exactly. So when we went there, they kind of said exactly that. You know, there's this terrible vibe, this terrible thing. And we just literally said, look, there's all that, but there's 20,000 people that are going to these parties, and there's now 10 parties a weekend. And there's
can't ignore it.
About 100,000 people are going out every weekend for this. You know, it's a specialist market. And it was fantastic. We put our first issue out, and by issue 3,
we said what it's called? Clubland Magazine,
Clubland, yeah. And in the first issue we printed 20,000, in the second issue we printed 30,000, and the third issue we printed 35,000.
Wow,
and
it's impressive, mate.
and it was sale or return.
It's really impressive.
Yeah, what really made
because
that,
again, and to put it into context, Mix magazine was formulated or founded in 1983,
yeah,
and DJ magazine was founded in 1991.
sure.
So you fell in between there, which was quite a big achievement.
Sure. The thing about DJ and Mix was they were very techy.
Yeah, especially in those early
Yeah,
days. Mix
they were
Mag was more about tech, wasn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely, they were very techy. And we came along, and we sold ourselves to the distributor as a lifestyle magazine.
It's a good point. It's a very good point.
For people who like dance music, you know. And yeah, we were selling 90% of what we were printing.
It's amazing. It really is amazing. It's an achievement, mate.
Our distributors were, you know, they were literally every time they gave us a monthly expense account.
Is that your email that's doing that? It's not mine, is it?
I'm going to
mute it, maybe.
I think it is. How do I mute?
I don't think it's me.
Question.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
I've muted it.
I can't. Oh, I'm going to close my mail. Yeah. Hang on a minute. There you go.
Cool.
Yeah, you know, that was the amazing thing, that we were selling 90% of what we were printing, and at that moment, the norm for those magazines was about 25%, 30%.
For sure, and I mean, and the thing is, I mean, who bought magazines back then? You didn't buy magazines back then, so for people to actually go to newsagents and buy the magazine was huge. Because again, like how you pointed out, Mix Mag was mostly about technology.
Yeah.
You know, it grew into a lifestyle magazine, but it was mostly tech when I really look back on it. And even DJ, them early magazines, it was really tech. So you was bringing a lifestyle magazine to the table, which no one, when we think about it, had done before. So in essence, I mean, there was people had touched upon it. You know, NME had touched upon it, but NME hated Acid House.
Yeah.
They hated Acid House. You know, they were into their rock bands and grunge bands and everything else, and they hated it.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where they had to speak about it.
Absolutely.
And they would do little tiny stories. And I mean, I even remember they did a special edition. I think it was from 1989. From 1988 to 1989, yeah? And they did an edition, and they did these huge lists of what was hot and what was not hot, you know, those types of lists. They used to do those things in the 80s, you know, and they would say, you know, Acid House is hot or whatever, and they would have a list of 10, you know. And apparently, I was told by Fitzroy from Hypnosis that they had Genesis in it. They had Best Party of 88. Yeah. And it was Genesis New Year's Eve party, and I thought they must have really begrudged putting that on there, because they hated it. And then the other was an industry magazine, which was Record Mirror. But Record Mirror was an industry magazine, and again they just had small articles. And then the other one, who again they started doing articles, was Face magazine. Face or ID magazine. Well, both of them actually. But they were all forced, and the difference between them is they were forced to report about Acid House, and they were forced to report about this dance culture, because there were so many people that were tuned into it that they just couldn't ignore it, you know. Whereas what you did, it was totally thought out. It was totally dedicated to promoting the scenes, because I remember your magazines. And I remember that, and at the time, I mean, I remember, I didn't know, but my uncle, who was a fashion designer, he was advertised in and God rest his soul now, but he was advertised in your first issue, Wiley with Remote.
Oh, yeah.
Remote clothing, you know. So it was you know. So that was mad. When I saw that, I was like, oh, wow, that's my uncle's clothes, you know. So that was a thing. So tell us a little bit about the content that you used to have.
So firstly, obviously, it was dance music led. So We did the first interview that Carl Cox ever did. I did that with Carl and Maxine.
I was going to say, I remember that, a picture of him and Maxine, wasn't it? Maxine from Brighton. I mean, Maxine was his partner at the time, and she kind of managed his career, you know, with an iron fist, you know.
Listen, I bumped into Maxine a few years ago when I was in London, and I always take my hat off to her. She was a tough cookie.
She was tough, but she knew what she wanted, you know, and she was tough from the off, mate. But she was great, you know, and she sold a lot of tickets. She was a ticket outlet as well, a ticket agent. So remember Maxine Brighton, you know? You can look at those old flyers and there's like Maxine Brighton, you know?
Maxine talked Sunrise into putting Carl on that program, you know?
Did she? Go on, Maxine. Go on.
Sunrise into putting Carl on that program.
So you did Carl Cox's first interview.
We were talking about new bands like Brand New Heavies, Baby Ford,
excellent.
Lisa Stanfield before she had her #1. We were talking about Inner City and Kevin Saunderson, and things like street fashion. We were screaming the value of graffiti, you know, rather than looking at grey walls in our cities.
Sure.
We wrote about.
And was you doing like charts, music charts and things like that, wasn't you?
But that was not really the main content of it. Everyone else was doing that, and we did record reviews, and we did a kind of.
You intentionally steered away from that. Yeah.
We did charts. We did club nights. We did a timeout thing. We took all the bits that the other magazines like DJ and Mix Mag and Record Mirror and Blues and Soul were doing, and then we tried.
And none of them were doing that, was they? I mean, in terms of acid house. So this was the first publication that actually, because like you said, I remember that you had all of the events in there and events for advertising. You had that like timeout type thing, and that was invaluable, mate. Invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were at the time. You didn't send your thing in and we wrote it out. We had people going out to those clubs to check them.
Yeah, sure.
I had a beautiful army of friends and people that just wanted to get into clubs for free.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, for sure.
I used to spend half my week putting people on guest lists. You know? I used to spend half my week editing and the other half my week putting people on guest lists.
Excuse me.
But we did that. We were talking about new designers, new clothing ranges. You know, we wrote articles about drugs, about HIV, the positives and negatives of drugs. We wrote about licensing and policing and club security when they were getting out of hand.
Yeah, which for a magazine in 1989,
yeah,
you know, it was quite serious.
We wrote about the dangers of tobacco, about all kinds of things that we found interesting. I just have to tell you.
And that's the thing, because it wasn't like, you know, thrown together like a Beano type way. It was still quite adult. It wasn't like, you know, thrown together kid in a kid type way, you know, acid type thing. You know, it was a really well together and really well thought out magazine for that time, for sure.
What we wanted to do is I wanted to create a magazine that you would read at home or on the train, or, you know, sitting out in your garden as a leisure, as an informed, not I've just been to a party, it's amazing and I'm feeling fantastic and I want to look at something, because that just doesn't happen. So we were trying to have a reader that was a little bit more intellectual, and that might not necessarily have been the moment to catch them after the party. It maybe is better on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday.
I can't see. Mum, I'm blind. These
words are jumping around. You know. So I think we incidentally, I just want to say that we had writers from Record Mirror, from ID, from the Evening Standard, and from the Daily Star, all writing for us under pseudonyms.
Excellent. And how amazing is
so
that? Considering,
the writing quality was really high, and I would contact these people who I thought were really writing well, and they would say, I can't, and I'd just say, look, write me this article under another name. I'll pay you for your article as a writer, as a journalist, but I want journalist. I don't want anybody writing it, you know. And I think that was the readers.
That was defining. That was a USP for sure.
And I think the people reading it appreciated that. There was still fun. We still poked fun at people. Because we went out to clubs and took pictures and things like that.
You still encapsulated the funness, you know, and the tenderness of the scene, but you did it. You approached it in a serious way. It's like, okay, we're not out here we're out here for fun. Yeah. But we're going to produce this as if we would produce a rock magazine or any other type of magazine. You know,
there was at one point there were 33 people working on the magazine.
Wow, dude, that's impressive.
8 of us in the office, and the rest were journalists and writers. You know.
And going back to those journalists and the writers for all of the big newspapers, I mean, for a start, I mean, you was approaching all those guys, and of course, those guys have been beating it up for 2 years, haven't they? You know, so it's like they'd said such terrible things. Yeah. All propaganda. You know, I mean, 90% propaganda. You know, total spin. Yeah. You know, and so to suddenly you have to say some good things. I mean, if we rewind, in the beginning they were saying good things. Do you remember in those Sun? That's right. In those Sun newspaper articles, they were saying really nice things. I remember they had their own like vocabulary that they made up. That was the slang. And I remember they had their own T-shirts and everything else. They had their own T-shirts. I think they were a $5 or something like that. And then within weeks, it was, stop these evil promoters. They're selling drugs to children, you know. Oh, and, you know, so they had a major turnaround. So, so suddenly this magazine's calling them up saying, hey, they're probably thinking they're trying to trap me. You know, they're going to get me down the office and kick my head in. You know?
Sure. I think there was, you know, as yin and yang, in every dark pool there's a little shining light, and in each there was always fantastic writers in those places, and quite often I would remember, she writing for you know, the Daily Star, and she wrote these little things about little clippets, and that was great. So I would go to them and say, okay, look, what about doing this? You know, what about writing about this? And I tried to choose subjects that were not just about clubs and music, you know, just something that you and I would be interested
something that you would want to read.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how I approach things. It's like, I want to do something that I would want to read, you know.
I think, and that was a great thing for the scene.
It was major for the scene.
It was a great thing for my writers. It was. I mean, the DJs and the musicians were amazing anyway. You know.
And every counterculture, you know, they have their own publications. Yeah. You know, and you, which again, you know, when you look back, you know, and even when we're talking about it now, you know, your magazine was that. You know, it's like, wow, dude, that's big.
That was it was a big thing. I know,
big really mate, you know, selling really 90,000 magazines. I mean, that's massive. Who does? I'll tell you what.
We sold about 250,000.
Oh, sorry, 250,000 magazines. I guarantee you, a lot of magazines don't do that now.
Yeah, it's tough.
So it's a huge achievement, mate.
But it all came to an end.
Yeah, as it always does. Because again, you come to a point where you have to make that decision, don't you?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like, do I carry on with this or?
I had the decision almost made for me.
Okay, go on.
My distributor was the second largest in the country, and it was owned by Robert Maxwell.
Okay.
And Robert Maxwell died.
Right.
And the empire dismantled.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
I suspect he's with the other one that just recently. And I suspect his daughter's going there as well, and they're all going to have, they're going to have a secret party somewhere.
Yeah, when he's either died or he's gone for a very long swim.
Yeah. He's gone now, but I he's like, yeah, whatever. You disappeared, and 500 million in pensions funds disappeared. So, I mean, look. I say to people, look, you can buy a book on the internet that says how to disappear for $10.99. Are you telling me that if you had billions, you couldn't find a way of getting suicided and just disappearing? I mean, come on, dude. Come on, And it's we know it works with Maxwell.
Yeah.
So it works, So, but anyway, that's a different story. But yeah, so Maxwell, there was a lot of turmoil, wasn't there? The company,
a lot of turmoil, and at that point,
he nicked all the pension money as well. So
yeah. And my mum was part of that pension money loss.
It's outrageous, isn't it? It's outrageous.
It was outrageous.
Yeah.
While that was all going on, I. Through this whole time of the magazine, I was still doing the odd party here and there. I was still doing a party every 6-8 weeks. And so I kind of thought, maybe I'll do something smaller. And I think Sunrise approached me to do a big party for them. So I kind of took that on, and then started the first Sunday night club with Dennis DeMac.
Go on, Sam. In the garage, is that the garage? Oh no, sorry. What am I talking about?
Dennis,
Sorry.
Dennis Park, you mean?
Yeah, because you had the one in Slough. What one was that again? I went there a couple of times.
Okay, with Steve Proctor, all that lot.
Yeah, they were there as well. I used to go down there with Tony.
They were great.
In Slough.
Yeah.
But yeah. So tell us about that.
Yeah,
here we are. So one of the reasons why people, because obviously, people are going out Saturday night. So why would they want to start a Sunday club?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they were still awake.
Yeah, they were still awake. And I think also the idea of Saturday night, it was now a big industry. It was 1993. It was a big industry.
Garage thing was happening. Ministry of Sound had been open for a year or so,
a
couple of years.
Ministry had come along. We strangely in the magazine issue that was due, that never ever came out, featured Ministry of Sound about to open. We'd done a big interview with them.
Was it 1990 they opened, or
that was
91?
92.
Oh, it was 92. Yeah.
I think 92.
Yeah.
So I think.
So the magazine ran from 1989 to 92.
Yeah, it was
impressive, mate.
It was late 89 to middle of 92. And
you would have covered. So basically, you would have covered, because a lot changed in that space, didn't it?
Yeah.
The music had changed. The counterculture had changed, and so you began writing music, in a hippie type way. This great music, it's all that, and then suddenly, 1990, like 91, it changed into this hardcore music, didn't it? Remember hardcore house?
Yeah.
And it seemed, and I don't want to take anything away from the sound or the music or anything like that, but it seemed to have a lot less heart than, you know, the house music that we'd been listening to previously to that, and it had a lot of a harder edge. And people said that at the time, you know, remembering it encouraged a lot harder drugs. So it was almost like the drugs changed, the drugs got harder, the music got harder. When I say the drugs got harder, it was still MDMA, you know, but because I don't want people to think, oh, what now? They were taking crack. You know? So it was still the same drugs, but everything was speeded up. Because I remember there was talk of certain substances were not, certain additives weren't available, and so they changed the MDMA formula, and then it was MDA or something like that.
I think for me,
it
was, as you say, there was a change of focus of what you went for.
Sure.
You know, initially you went for an atmosphere, an experience. You know, and that involved the crowd, the music, the DJs doing this amazing mixing that no one had heard before, you know, and there were some fantastically creative DJs. So that was the focus. And if a DJ, you know, put a 3-4 string of records together that were just, you were just like, man, that's amazing. I think the focus went from there to, let's just go out and have the best time possible. And sometimes that is not good for other people around you.
Yeah, because it was almost like it was singular to just you and your group type thing.
Absolutely.
Which was a lot of the case before Acid House came along.
Yeah.
You know, when Acid House came along, it was the I became the we became the us, didn't it? Yeah. So now, and that is actually a true statement of the way that it grew, because it got to that point where originally people felt like they may have needed a drug to experience what they were experiencing in these group situations. And I think that once people realized that actually I don't need the drug to actually experience that unity, that togetherness, and because if you go to any concert, if you go to a football match, wherever you are, you're going to experience what the crowd is experiencing. If a football team is losing, you feel that anger and that tension in the air. If a football team is winning, you know, you feel that euphoria.
Yeah.
And it's so, and once people realize that, because in the beginning, people, they needed the doors to be kicked in, basically, didn't they? Or the gates to be thrown open for them to realize that actually this experience that I'm having right now isn't an unnatural experience. There's nothing wrong with feeling love for people, my friends, and those people around me, you know?
I mean, there was many people by the end of '93 that really thought the scene was over.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's 5 years on.
Yeah.
You know,
they really did feel that there was a lot of people I knew that were not going clubbing.
Yeah.
And that was part of the reason of the Sunday night, of getting those people out to come to a non-club atmosphere.
Sure.
You know,
they could dress up, because they used to dress up as well, didn't they, that crowd?
No.
Okay. Still t-shirts, yeah.
Well, it was wear what you like. But it was a very nice, dressy crowd. The girls loved dressing up for it.
Yeah.
You know,
because even that in and of itself, that came around too, didn't it? Because now, because when we talk about it, we speak about it in a flippant way. Oh, you know, the girls were all dressed up. It's like, no, hang on. Before Acid House happened, the girls used to dress up. Acid House happened, everyone dressed down. No one really gave a monkeys. The girls were wearing sweatpants and sweatshirts, baggy jumpers and all that stuff. And then we came out of that, and then people started to say, well, do you know what? I actually want to dress up again today. And then, you know, the girls started dressing up again. So it went full circle, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
I think.
And then that Sunday scene that you speak of, I mean, I'm going to be speaking to Norris Windross and Dominic and Creed. I'm doing them in a group talk, you know, and they're going to speak more about that time as well, you know.
Well, Norris was one of my residents.
Yeah.
And if Creed and Dominic are watching, yes, I still regret not putting you on.
Oh, bless.
And they need to speak to Dennis about that.
Blame it on someone else, mate. It was Dennis. That was the name. I said earlier on at the beginning, I said Egypt with Dave, and I meant the white Dave. I didn't mean the black Dave, but maybe it was Dennis, you know. I remember, but anyway. So the Sunday scene thing was it became massive, absolutely huge. And it's like what you said, people, and it's the same as in Ibiza. If you remember, it got to a time when people wasn't going out on Saturday night. They were waiting till space opened Sunday morning.
Absolutely.
And then you stay up for 3 days. But the same thing happened with this Sunday thing. It's like there were people that, because you remember when it began, it was, you know, a couple of pubs around the corner who couldn't serve alcohol because it wasn't time, you know, the license hours hadn't started yet. And people would just leave Ministry of Sound and then go into these pubs. But then people like yourself, you went and got actual venues and was like,
we went to the Café de Paris. And that was just a fantastic,
beautiful venue. Beautiful.
You know, it was a great club venue.
Yeah,
you know.
world famous venue as well, Café de Paris. I mean, Wednesday nights at the Caf.
Oh yeah.
Mate, in the 80s, that was the spot. Yeah.
So you know, I think
that kick-started that whole massive Sunday scene because it grew. I mean, it grew into its own beast. It was a beast, wasn't it? You know,
that was a beautiful beast. And then people that normally went out on Saturdays stopped doing that and going Sunday. You know.
Yeah. But the only problem with that is we were going out on the Sunday. I mean, our timetable was basically meet in the VIP at Ministry of Sound about 2 a.m. and then from then basically be up for like 3 days, you know.
Yeah.
so it didn't really stop us, you know. It was like, you know, we've got to be home so we can go to work. It was like, no, we're building careers as we go along. You know, it's DIY, you know. So it just, and as you said, the music had changed, everything had changed. And it's like, you know, at that point you've been in the game 5 years and it does get a little bit tiring, doesn't it? You know, it's a nightlife career. You know, you're out on nights all of the time. You know, in the days you just barely get your flyers around to the shops. I mean, it wasn't easy being a promoter, was it, back then?
No, Dave. It was a great life.
Yeah, it was a great life.
You had to be a bit disciplined.
Yeah.
And understand you had a lot of freedom, but there were certain things you had to do. You had to be a little organised.
Yeah. A lot organised. Yeah.
And I really took it on as that, and partied separately from you know, any party I ever did. I never ever partied in the party.
Sure.
I always
Me neither.
waited. Always waited and did. And
after. I remember, mate. You would take like, you know, 200 people back to your gaff.
I think if after partying was in the Olympics. If after party was in the Olympics, we'd both be marathon runners of that one. I appreciate your.
I'm not trying to throw the heat just to you.
I appreciate all the fun you gave me.
Mate, and you, brother. It's been an amazing journey.
You had a really fun attitude to partying.
Appreciate it.
And it was always everything we did was done for pleasure. It wasn't to escape.
And it was all heart. Yeah, it was all heart.
It wasn't it for me and you and many people that I know that worked in the scene. It was never for money, and we didn't go to escape. We didn't go to parties to escape our jobs or our lives or our problems. It was pleasure.
It was total pleasure.
Sheer pleasure.
Yeah. And it just. And you know, when you look back, I mean, I guess that's why I always say to the people coming up, you know, your nephews and the younger people, that, you know, you got to do something that you love.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And just be as good as what you can be doing something that you love, and then it won't be like work, you know. And that was one of the things that whole scene gave to all us lot coming up. It was like before that, you know, we had our careers were all kind of written out for us. You know, there were only certain industries, and for us kids in Hackney, you know, it was like labourer, you know, type careers. So there was nothing really, you know, there was no dream of, you know, running big events, you know, event management or anything like that. That wasn't in our future at all. And so for this to come, it came along and it gave so many people professional platforms. I mean, even look at today with Carl Cox, and you know, Carl Cox charging £1 million for a set. I mean, that's just amazing, man, you know. So, and you remember Carl from the old days, I don't know how much you paid him, but you know, he didn't ask for much money, and he was a really hard working DJ, you know. That's one thing about Carl. He was a really hard working DJ.
Yeah,
you know?
I have to say that when you look through the big DJ list that there was around, the guys at the top, Paul, Danny, Carl, you know,
came from that period.
They were all came from there, but also Wayne, they were all really nice people.
Yeah,
you know,
it made a difference.
They were really nice people. And you know, not to say I haven't encountered some unnice DJs.
To put it politely.
but yeah, I think most of those people that I encountered
that original crop, you know, people.
I think the original crop always had that with Fab and Groove, with all those people, and even the DJs that never really made those high things, high end, the Alexes, the Norrises, the Mets. All those people, they were really lovely people that loved the scene, you know.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because it ended up, you know, only a few DJs and even party promoters get highlighted. I mean, I get accused of that on Facebook sometimes. After a documentary had come out, you know, you get people, there's one particular person, I'm not going to mention their name, but they would come online and they would start saying, oh, you know, why didn't they come and interview me? They only interview the same people over and over again, and they say, well, why didn't you mention me and stuff like that? And you say, well, actually, I mention everybody. It's not my fault that they choose to cut that out, because a lot of the time when you're doing an interview for BBC, you know, or wherever it is, Channel 4, you know, Channel 5, they know what they want from that documentary program. So when you start mentioning these names, because of the way that it works in that particular profession, is that they need completed, rounded stories. So you just throwing a name in the middle of a conversation, for them, that's not how they do it, because they will then need to get all the information about that person and possibly try and interview that person. So rather than go through that process, they rather just cut it out, you know. So I mention them. I always mention all of the guys. I mean, I might not mention the chap I just mentioned, but sorry. But I mention everybody, you know.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Trev Funk really got missed out for a lot of years.
100%. I always say that.
But now I feel the more I read, the more he gets mentioned.
Yeah. But he still doesn't get mentioned in the right way. And I've even had this conversation with him, you know.
Yeah.
It's like people talk about when the guys went over there, but it's like, yeah, but you went over there and Trevor was there.
Yeah, Trevor was the
one, you know, so why hasn't it become, and Ian was there, so why hasn't it become like it'd be for 7? You know, why is it just 5? You know, Trevor was there, dude, and you went over there, you saw what it was like.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was when amnesia had no roof and stuff, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wild dogs running around and the hippies and because what a lot of people, sorry brother, you know, a lot of people also don't realize about Ibiza is that Osho, the guru Osho, was there, wasn't he, in the 60s? And they were all taking MDMA in their flowing white gowns and and you know, and dancing all around the island. I mean, that was long before, you know, there was a single acid house beat, you know.
I mean, even before Orson Welles made a film there, and they
Orson
were
Welles made a film there.
That was the whole, you know, Hollywood stroke.
Yeah.
Elite, Europe, elite. They were having parties.
Yeah, and all the rock and rollers. Yeah. At Pikes and stuff like that, you know, there was a few real scenes going on over there.
They were doing dinner parties
and it's this, and that's why I don't know if you saw, because I remember, yeah, when I was going to Ibiza, we would roll up at Space with Alex and Brandon, and they would have their record decks with them. And you roll up, and they just threw the record decks on the terrace, on the bar, in the terrace at Space.
Yeah.
And, you know, we all rolled in there together, and then they just wire the turntables up, and away we went, you know. And I mean, they were just such amazing, such great parties, you know.
Yeah.
And so going from that to when I watched the closing party of Space with Carl Cox, he played.
Yeah.
But it was like, there was, I don't know, there was like 10,000 people there. You're like, where did all these people come from? It's like, where have they built this venue, you know? Because you remember on the terrace, I mean, you get the original terrace, they extended it, but you know, you get like 300 people, 400 people. And like when you, going back to what you said earlier about doing smaller parties, and because after, a lot later on, that's what you were doing. You were doing lots of these really cool parties, you know, in really beautiful settings. And it become, because now that people had experienced those massive parties of thousands of people, it then become back to being an individual experience. And so you go to a party with 300-400 people and have an amazing time, you know, and that's kind of where you went, wasn't it?
Yeah, I kind of took it back to sort of the beginning, and started running around estate agents and renting big mansions. And that's when we're just doing a film production stroke video stroke pop video, and can we rent your mansion for the weekend? Came along.
That always worked, didn't it? We're doing a documentary for Channel 4. Where's all the camera equipment? All the kit, all the crew, all coming later.
I mean, by that time we had such a good team that we'd come in, we'd put the sound, we'd do amazing sets, and then we'd have cleaners come in and clean it for 2 days solid to try and get the smell of beer or
it's a horrible smell.
Exactly. Those are the days of smoking inside people,
as well,
beer and tobacco.
Imagine that.
You know, so we literally had cleaners with air filters and things come in for 2 days after, and that were great. They were great. You know, it was kind of between. You know, we always kept it to around 800 people.
Nice.
And quite often we would we'd let the police know at the last minute.
Okay.
And just, you know, hey, we're doing this party at this, hope we don't make too much noise, let us know. And when they turned up, you know, we showed them our contract and, hey, we're leaving on Monday morning, we're just doing this little thing. And they were really cool. By that time, you know, if you spoke with some kind of intelligence with the police, they are intelligent people who see, hey, there's 800 people and maybe they're not doing such a bad thing and there's no trouble.
It's same back then, you know, their whole issue was health and safety. It really was. I mean, in the beginning,
that was only the issue.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, in the beginning, you know, they would roll by our warehouses and just say to security, I mean, after I've done the initial blag, you know, they'd, you know, and convinced them that, you know, we rented the building through the correct channels. After I've gone through all that, you know, later on, they would literally just drive past and say to security, you know, is everything all right? This was 88, early 89. And it was only because of the peer pressure from the government and from the media that they felt like they had to be seen to be doing something, you know, but really they didn't care. They're like, dude, you know, I get more problems with this little crowd down in this pub than I do with those 10,000 people down the road. The only issue that we were presenting was a traffic issue, but we've gone by 8 in the morning. So you know.
we at the end we had that philosophy, and the police would come, as you say, quite often they would come and ask us what time we're finishing, and we'd kind of say, we're thinking 5, 6, what do you think? And they'd say, yeah, well, and often they'd come and they'd offer us to, hey, we see there's a lot of cars parked here. Do you want us to guide you off the land? Or,
I know.
you know,
They've done
I
it
mean,
for us. It's incredible when that happens.
This was in private mansion house and car parks and things like that.
No,
So,
you've done some good parties, dude.
yeah.
I've been to a couple of New Year's Eve ones as well. Are great parties, mate. Absolutely good. But even at your house, you know, you do know how to throw a party. So people, and that's what it's about. It's about, you get to that point where you want to create memories, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, people say to me, "Oh, you know, when's the next party?" And I don't. It's, for me, it was creating memories. You know, it was new. It was so exciting. You know, that you couldn't wait to do another party. I mean, Genesis, we were known for doing, in that first 3 months of 89, a party on every Saturday, a large scale party as well. So, you know, so we had the heart for it, and I knew why I was doing it. It was the unity. It was joining all of these forces together. It was providing a platform where people can really let go of all their inhibitions and be themselves, you know, and in a safe environment. And so when I look at doing parties now, it's like, well, what's my motivation now? Is it money? You know, and once the money's the motivator, then I don't really want to do it. You know, I'm still really love the creativity and the art end of things. You know, I'm all about the arts, and if I can't see any art in it, and heart, then I'm just like, you know.
I really enjoyed the last couple of years of doing that. And then it got to 2000, and I thought it was a nice time to end.
Yeah.
Not to, and then I sort of went off to do music.
So yeah, tell us about now. Yeah, exactly. So we've spoken about so much about the past. So now, I mean, like, as I'm speaking to you right now, you're at home, you're in your recording studio, or you're in your creative studio in the south of France. You know, so tell us about that, mate. And tell us about, I personally know you've done some really amazing projects here, some musical projects that are just amazing. So
after 2000, I started creating some events for corporates, but music events, always music based, and finding venues for those people. I did Red Bull in the park when they jumped off the thing. We did some creative. We did
excellent
Chemical Brothers in Trafalgar Square. We did Pavarotti in the park. I was lucky to work on. We did some bits for Live Aid and Live 8. Sorry, not Live Aid. I think that was about 100 years before. Sorry.
Yeah, but same thing.
And then
they did the same thing with the money. No, sorry.
Let's not go in there. We all know some stories. And statute of limitations.
It's not over yet. It's not over yet. But that must have been really amazing, because look, you've gone from you're doing these acid house parties to these cool members parties, and now you're doing, you know, Chemical Brothers and Pavarotti, for example. I mean,
that was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that was 50,000 people in Hyde Park.
Wow, amazing! I remember it.
That was
amazing.
That was just a big team effort when you're working with big PR.
Oh,
companies.
for sure, it's a team effort, but it's just to be involved in something like that, exactly. Because again, it was breaking ground. You know, having Pavarotti doing opera in a park and not into some type of theatre. So even that was amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember he had these powers with him as well, didn't he? What they call them, the four.
No, the
tenors.
I mean, on that party, even Charles and Dinah turned up.
See, you know, it's like, there you are, you know.
Yeah, there you go. Royalty were raving.
There you go, mate. So you've done all that amazing stuff, but now the musical stuff that you're involved in, it's just.
So I left London around 2011 to live in India, which I'd been going to and fro India for about almost 10 years, and I was helping two of my friends do a party in Goa, that just happened to be the biggest party in Goa at the time.
Of course.
And I did that with them for about 3-4 years. And then I got together with my beautiful wife in South India, and she was a artist. She was a musician.
An amazingly talented musician and artist, for sure.
And she was doing some amazingly things I'd never seen. She was looping and things back in 2001, 2003.
Wow. Yeah, which has obviously been made quite famous in recent times, but in 2001.
She was working with all these tech stuff. So we got together. I'd left London to live in India, and it was just, we wanted to live a different life. And then people from managing...
And didn't your wife have a place out there, or was she doing? Yeah, she was doing some sort of events, or was it a bar? Or
she was doing a live set every Friday.
Cool.
That was super cool. It had all the local people, all the hip people. We had Adele's manager. We had Mike from the manager of Prodigy, Mike Champion. Another one, rest his soul, who was a crazy bugger, and who were telling us, come to England, come to the States, come to here. We had Amp Fiddler's manager saying, come to the States. So we decided on a new adventure, and we wanted to live in the sun. We checked out Ibiza. We went to Marrakesh, and we stayed with Cyrus.
Big shout out to Cyrus.
Big shout out to Cyrus and Maggie.
Big shout out to Cyrus. That's right. I hooked you up, didn't I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent.
And then we came to the south of France, and we just found this amazing old convent, a 500-year-old convent, and we
amazing.
kind of we bought that in an hour, and then we're now artists. We create music-based art projects. It's junecarey.com for anyone that wants to see it. She's doing some amazing stuff.
Spell it out for them.
Yeah, JUNKE. You'll have to put it up after on the link. But we're doing these things with the Royal College of Art. We are working.
You did that amazing video for the NASA. Was it a NASA competition?
We've done a video for NASA, which got in some film prizes. It was our first time we'd ever made a video.
and it was an amazing video, because wasn't it that 3D video using all the latest Google pen tech and
so she's
and the guy that did the artwork, he's some
Patrick Morgan was amazing. So we're working with visual artists and we're kind of working with tech companies at the cutting edge. So we worked with Google, with NASA, as you said, with King's College. We're now working on the next project, which is a spatial sound performance in the dark.
Cool. In the pitch black,
In pitch black.
Excellent. Wow. I tell you what, just saying it, I can feel my chest like vibrating.
And spatial sound, for those of you you've got to check it out. It's amazing. So we have 8 or 10 speakers in a circle, and you have each musician or voice coming out of each speaker. And what the new technology does is that we're allowed to switch the guitar that you can hear behind you with the voice in front, and switch them.
Wow, dude.
And we've all listened to
crazy. That's very Pink Floyd, isn't it?
We were in Electronic Sound magazine in July, and they likened us to innovators like Bowie and Pink Floyd. So
that was definitely
we were touched.
Yeah, mate. That was definitely, as soon as you said it, it was like, oh, that's very ooh. But as soon as you mentioned it, I was like getting like vibrations in my chest. It's like spatial sound in the pitch black. Wow.
I mean,
and then do you mix it live? You know, like change those voices around and.
No, on this
Okay.
version, it's recorded.
Yeah.
There's about 22 people that worked on the project: musicians, artists,
Wow.
engineers.
Cool.
We did
And is that out now, or is it coming
did
out?
some
Or
experimental performances in Bristol, Birmingham, and
wow.
Plymouth last year.
Cool.
And because of COVID, it's not gone forward, but we are going to a few festivals for next year, some art festivals.
Excellent.
Which
again is a different proposition, isn't it? You know, art festival as opposed to music festivals.
Yeah, we don't go to music festivals. It's art based.
Yeah.
You know, we do see ourselves as artists, and we're really enjoying that life. It's creative, and for me, it's a progression of something new, something innovative, and exciting. You know, which like you, the idea is to experience new things, but you want to have other people experience it.
Yeah, because it can be lonely, you know.
Yeah.
So the fact that you have a wife that shares all these creative endeavors is just amazing. I mean, your whole family, you're all creative. The kids are creative. Everyone's creative.
Yeah, my daughter June is and she's singing on it.
See what I mean? It's like it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. You've built a really beautiful life for yourself there, mate. Well done. Because in essence, that's what we're all really chasing, isn't it? You know, it's that. Well, sometimes it's finding that partner. You know, sometimes it's, you know, you're going to go it alone. But at the end of the day, it's about finding you and about finding that middle ground. And once you find you and you're secure in yourself, to be able to share that with someone else who's just as secure in their selves is just an amazing partnership to have, and I feel like that's what we're all looking for. And you found it, man, and that's like, go on, son.
I'm going to leave you with something really. I have been lucky my whole life, and it doesn't seem that way if I examine some of the details, but overall I've been very lucky. I came from India when I was 8. My mother was amazing. She took me to see Stevie Wonder for my 10th birthday, and I got to meet him backstage.
Wow.
You know, when I was at school in Brixton, in Tulsa, for all those people that went there, I was late for school one morning, and I was held outside the headmaster's office, and I thought that I was going to be in trouble. But in fact, they had locked the doors because there was a man giving a talk. And this man walked past me, and just as he walked past me, he said, "Hi, how you doing?" And I was speechless. It was Muhammad Ali, gave a talk to our school.
Oh, wow, dude.
And he said...
and he said hello to you.
Yeah. Because I thought I was in trouble. I didn't say a single word back. I was
big black man, eh?
I was a 13-year-old boy in shock. I mean,
because he was a huge man as well, wasn't he?
He was a big man,
and to be as a small child as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, at that moment there was only Muhammad Ali, Bruce Lee, and Michael Jackson who were in the top 3.
Yeah,
of all
superstars.
People, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But he said something to these, you know, to 2,000 boys in Brixton, and what he said was, whatever you do, you have to enjoy it, and it has to be something you can share to be fulfilled. And it doesn't matter if you're cleaning an office, or you're singing a song, or you're making a party, in my case. It has to be something that is shared. And I think you are one of those people that did that, and I appreciate
you too, brother.
Your love for that. And,
you too, brother.
Anyone, and with the podcast, it's a fantastic idea. There's some fantastic people to be heard, rather than the main names that everyone hears.
Exactly.
And the fact you're going in underground.
Underground, son, because that's where the story is, isn't it? You know, it's not just with those faces that we always see. I know I'm one of those faces on those documentaries, but you know, it's a lot deeper than that. And, you know, I want to get everybody's stories, and your story is as important as my story, you know. So I'm really pleased that you came onto the podcast, and we'll hook up and we'll do some things. And the next time we'll have the missus on, we're trying maybe even do some sort of live art performance. We're trying, we'll do something. We'll do some type of broadcast from your house.
Sure.
That sounds cool. So listen, we'll arrange that 100%. And I really, because I know you've got lots on. And right now, just for people that are listening, it's a really hot day in London. We're in September, but it's about 30 degrees outside. And is it hot over where you are as well?
Wayne, it's hot from
south of France.
We're in the south of France.
Listen, mate, I really appreciate you coming on. Love to all the family. Give everyone a big hug for me. And I hope to see you really, really soon. Thanks again. Loads of love, brother. Thanks for coming on to the podcast.
Thanks, love.
Take care, brother. See you soon, brother.
Do you think it's anything to do with a certain religion, do you think?
No,
is it anything like that?
No, it's more to do with a kind of a drug, isn't it? It's a drug.
Yeah, well, those that take it ought to be ashamed of themselves.
According to The Sun, there were thousands of empty ecstasy wrappers littering the floor of the 250-foot-long hangar.
Drugs, sex, sensation.
Some newspapers have called acid house music a sinister and evil cult which lures young people into drug taking. The message is certainly getting across.
The organisers kept the location secret until the very last moment, which was the main reason, according to the papers, why there were so few police here and they were unable to act.
Drug-crazed kids, some as young as 12, boogied for 8 hours yesterday at Britain's biggest ever ecstasy bash.
The party took place here, infiltrated by reporters from the Mail and the Sun.
There's meant to be a drugs-related craze.
What do you know about acid house music?
It must affect the brain in some way.
Unless it's just the music that does it.
All them lights flashing don't do you any good either, do it? I wouldn't even go in the pub where them lights are.
Oh, no,
they drive you
no.
mad, don't